Hey everybody, welcome back to Advanced Kayak Angler. Appreciate you tuning in. This week with me, I got guest co-host Chuck Wise. What's going on, man?
How's it going, man? Glad to be on here.
Yeah, yeah, going good. Yeah, you just fished Logan Martin today. Did pretty good, huh?
Yeah. We got some decent numbers. My neighbor's been trying to figure it out, and we finally figured something out today, so it's always good.
Cool. I wish I lived close to a lake like that where I could just go all the time.
Yeah, like 5 minutes
I do
from Riverside. It's pretty awesome.
I need to. God, I gotta move. We actually talked about it today, but I don't know. It ain't gonna happen. So, hey, it's such a nice neighborhood, good schools, the whole thing. The whole reason why we moved here, but it's just like 45 to 50 minutes from any lake, which is
Yeah,
awful. And we don't have much of a yard. Like, we have a big yard, but it's just trees and like non-usable flat area. So the
yeah.
kids, and we play soccer in the driveway, and that's like they just always go down into the ravine. And there's so much poison ivy and poison oak, you can't go to like the winter. So it's every winter, it's like going down there with this giant, throwing all the balls back up, hundreds of
Nice.
dollars worth of balls down there. So yeah, he doesn't even try to keep them in the driveway. It's like yeah, I don't know. Sorry,
Dad will
I'll
get another
stop.
ball. He wins enough money. He can give me all the balls he needs.
Exactly, a little dad rant there. But today, I got my frog shirt on, not affiliated with Scum Frog. I just like their frogs, and they were having a sale, so I got like that and some other like American Tackle Works. I really like these shirts. They're like
Yeah,
Tech T or something, and I
it's
was like,
awesome.
"Ooh, I'll get one of every brand because I like the shirt so much." And they were on sale. I'm cheap, but yeah. So this week we're talking about frogs. So like
A
maybe the funnest
frog.
way, yeah, maybe the funnest way to catch fish. So it's going to be a good time. And first, I would refer you back to the best frog fisherman I know is oh Lord, yeah, Randall Wallace up in North Alabama. That guy slays, and we had a paddle. Whenever I was still with Paddle and Fin, he was on there and he talked about frogs and his rod and had a bunch of tips. And that's the reason because I would have had him back on. The two best guys, not that's the best local guy, I'll say. Brad Case is also great. I just had him on. So but I kind of want to space it out too. I try to give everybody some shine and let everybody come on the show as much as I can. I don't want to just repeat the same people. But probably should have talked about frogs with Brad though, because I know him and John Lessman are both frog masters. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I'll go ahead and bring everybody on. We got Daniel Morris from Tennessee, Chris Catucci from Rhode Island, and Tim Rodman, the fishing lawyer from Texas. So we, want to spread it out. So, and me and Chuck are here in Alabama. So kind of wanted to get everybody's different thoughts on it. How y'all doing, guys?
Good. Can't
Good. How
complain.
are you?
Cool. Appreciate y'all being on. Daniel, we'll start with you. Tell everybody who you are, man.
I'm one of the tournament directors for Kayak Bass Fishing Tennessee. Uh, home club for Russ, Josh, Adam. A
God bless you.
couple more national champions are floating around in our club as well. Um, Jamie's here now. Uh,
Jamie, who?
oh God, you would have to ask me that. He
Broad
won.
or?
No, he won Denison.
Oh, Jamie, yeah. God dang. But
So,
everybody's moving to Nashville too, though, right? So I guess
oh God, yeah,
everybody's eventually going to come there.
my rent's showing it. So,
No.
um, I've done the Spro tournaments, almost every one that I could do. I've got a big bass for Spro and a top 10 finish. So I may not be one of the best, but I like to have fun doing it.
Heck yeah, man. And all right, Chris, how about you, man? He was telling us he shucks oysters on the side. He's the shuckologist, so he was telling us about that too. And I didn't realize you have an oyster shirt. Like you are
Yeah.
serious whenever you have a shirt to go with it.
Oh, we're repping. Don't worry.
There we go.
But yeah. So I actually my bass fishing journey started in high school. I was fortunate enough to win the Junior Bass Fishing World Championship down in Shreveport, Louisiana, on Cross Lake. So from then
Cross,
on
okay.
in, I won a Triton Storm aluminum bass boat, and I didn't even have a driver's license at that point, which was pretty dangerous. But basically went to college, studied aquaculture and fisheries. That's kind of where I got my introduction to oysters. And I ended up selling my boat, and I bought a Hobie, and I've been kayak fishing since then.
Heck yeah. And wait, yeah, you were on the Rhode Island team for KFL?
Yeah, I was one of the guys on the Rebels. You might have saw some highlight reels of me losing some fish on a frog, aka also getting fish denied on a frog in the last 40 seconds of a tournament. But it's been a fun ride.
And Tim, how about you?
Well, as you said, I'm from Texas. I'm a lawyer here at the office on a Sunday evening, get ready for the week. You know, my usual. Just a guy that likes to sling a frog around. I love throwing a frog. It's probably my favorite bait. Cashed quite a few checks off of it and got a win off of it. And it just happens to be something I've been throwing since I was a kid. You know, it's hard to beat a frog. My favorite
Frog
thing
and
out there to throw.
underspin. I had you on before with paddle and fin, and you were doing it was about underspins and small swim baits. So you're like me. You kind of like a little bit of the big and the small.
Yeah. The underspins are great too, but he's blowing up on a frog. We all know how that goes. Yeah. There's nothing like it out there. So
it's funny. I've said on here before, like I don't throw a whole lot of stuff in the middle. My stuff's like big baits, top waters, frogs, swim jigs, braid, and things like that, or like drop shot or Ned, wacky rig. Like I don't throw it. I don't have a lot of the in between. I guess I should work on that, but
it's all right. You look like you're doing all right. I wouldn't worry too much about it there, buddy.
Yeah, but we're talking about frogs, so let's talk about that. I guess we'll start with frogs. Like, what's everybody's favorite? Chuck, we'll start with you, man.
Man,
like in your lineup, like how do the different frogs that you throw like interact with one another? That's always something I'm interested in because if I could carry 20 different kinds of frogs for every situation, and maybe if I were going to, I would have a couple of other kind of frogs I usually don't throw if I know I'm going to Gunnersville or I'm going to Chickamauga or something like that, or I'm going somewhere where I know it's going to be, the cheese mats on the fall on Gunnersville. I'm gonna bring every frog I freaking own. But most of the time, like, where are the frogs that you bring, and why are you bringing those frogs?
Well, I would say mainly two frogs is what I throw for the most part. The Booyah Pad Crasher is probably my number one, and the Poppin' Pad Crasher, and then the Spro, just the normal Spro frog. It's like I think the 65 without the popping. Those are my go-tos, and honestly, I throw them in grass, like thick matted stuff in Gunnersville, but I honestly like to throw them more around like wood and like water willow, sparse grass like that. That's kind of where like when I see a good frog lot, that's what I'm looking for. But maybe just the two.
Hold on, Chuck. I'm gonna kick out and then go out and then follow a link back in. You're kind of breaking up a little bit.
All right, go ahead. Sorry.
Cool. No, you're good. It happens. Technology in Alabama. Daniel, how about you, man? Oh, I mean, you did well in the Spro Frog tournament, so I guess you're a Spro man, right?
I've fallen in love with the Spro flapping frog. I mean, here in Nashville.
Okay.
Oh yeah, it's because I can fish it like a moving bait. I just don't have the patience for finesse. It'll kill me every tournament. But I like moving. It's you can pause it. It's going to float. It's going to get smashed. Up here, I'll have a frog tied on year round, and I'll throw it up against wood. I'll throw it into treetops. You name it. It's on 365 days a year up here, and most people have no clue that it works 365.
Yeah, I agree. It's funny here in Alabama, and I've said this before, that kind of the winter mats, whenever it's just dead grass mats, on the warm days, the fish will still get underneath those mats. I think it's a technique like people just completely miss. They don't think about frogs or slow rolling some kind of grass top water bait over those dead mats. Sometimes man, I've destroyed them in the winter doing that.
And over the last 2 years, the grass is finally starting to come back up here. So we've got subsurface grass. We really don't have matted out grass. And we'll have some of the freestanding strains of stuff that's like 6 foot, 6 foot long strands. So you get a whole field of that. And that spro flapping frog is just perfect to motor around and pull through it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense why you would throw that frog then if you have a lot of submerged grass there. Chris, how about you, man? What's Rhode Island frogging like?
Oh, it's nothing too crazy. I mean, I'm fishing around the same type of stuff as, most of the people around the country, a little bit of wood, a little bit of grass, docks. But for me, I think there's like two that I like to use and one that I will use, but I'm afraid to use. So my go-to is the Spro Poppin' Frog 65. I do bend the hooks out a little bit on it, and I do trim the legs. I try and get it so it skips well. But that and the Scum Frog Launch Series seems to be like, if I'm fishing heavy cover,
Yes,
I
sir.
want the Launch Series. I feel like it really does well in terms of like making good popping, kind of disturbance on a mat. And the owner hooks on those are unbelievable. And then I have the Jacal Gavacho frog, which I think it skips really well. It has a killer action. Everything's great about that frog. It is very weedless, but it also has a terrible hookup to land ratio. Those hooks just don't collapse well on the body. And that's the frog I was using when you guys saw me lose that fish in the KFL matchup. That Gavacho. It gets bit. It's a good frog. The hooks, the design, though, it has its issues, and I'm afraid to use it in a tournament situation.
I wish Chuck was still on here because there was a tournament on. We were at some Coleman Lake. Not it was this year, and he ended up getting second to me, and he was throwing a frog, and it was that same Gravaucho frog, and he
Oh,
lost like 5 fish in a row. He literally, because
dude.
he has his camera, his GoPro, and he took it and threw that some bitch on the bank. He's like, y'all can keep. He literally took it, cut it off, and threw it on the bank and
That
cussed at his
frog is a
camera.
tease because it gets good bites. It really has a sick action. It skips well. It doesn't get snagged. It just doesn't keep the fish hooked, though.
Yeah. Good practice frog, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, well, that sometimes that could be just as important. I might have to think about throwing that one into a lineup because they're a little bit smaller, right?
No, they're pretty
Is it
standard, I
regular?
think. They're not like, I would call them a typical size. I think that the thing is, though, you could legitimately toss that thing into a tree and it's not going to get snagged. It is very weedless, but that's also why the hookup ratio is terrible. You can't bend
Yeah.
those hooks they put on it.
All right, Tim, how about you, man?
Well, I wish Chuck was still on here. I'm with Chuck. I love a pad crasher, an old school pad crasher. Oh, there he is, giving you some props, Chuck. This frog right here, I have probably 10 of these
What,
suckers. That's
leopard?
what I throw. Yeah, just a white one with it, and I like to mark up the bottoms and stuff. But just a pad crasher, and if I want to make a little noise, a popping pad crasher. But there's something about the way these. I don't know if it's just the angle of the bottom or what, but you can really work just a plain Jane pad crasher. You can make it pop really, really well by itself, and it's kind of a subtle noise. And I don't know, I've just been throwing them for years. They have a great hookup ratio. I don't even bend the hooks out of the box. They're a great frog just all around. And then the best part, they don't cost $1 million. So You
That's
can
right.
lose them and not cry about it. Great.
Yeah, anywhere you can save money is a
Yeah.
blessing. Hey, Chuck, isn't that Gavaucho frog? That's the one that you hate so much.
No, that's the jackal Kiera frog.
Oh, the Kiera frog.
Oh,
There you go.
that's the small frog you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the
The
hook
Gavacho is a poppin' style larger.
Oh, okay.
That I haven't used that one, but that one looks a lot better.
It's not.
Yeah, he was saying the hookup ratio is awful.
It sucks so bad.
It's a tease, that lure.
Dan beat me in a tournament a couple months ago because of that frog. I probably lost 5 or 10, like at least 10 blow ups on that thing. I cut it off. I cut it off and I put a pad crasher on. Didn't miss another one off.
I wish I had that video. If I were a good podcast host, I'd have that video queued up and like play it right now. But I'm not. But my frogs, I love the scum frog, launch frog. That's kind of if I'm throwing mats. The scum frog also has a trophy series popping frog. I don't throw a popping frog too much, but probably like I would say at least 50% of the time, my frog of choice is a Stanley top toad. Kind of same way with Daniel. I love that more toad style action. It's just like the Spro flapping frog. They're pretty close. Like I couldn't find any whenever I was on Okeechobee, so I bought a flapping frog, and it's pretty close to the same thing. And they're good because they just kind of do a little bit of everything. They definitely don't walk, but it seems like the hookup ratio is really good. I like that. The colors, and they're just super durable, not too expensive. You replace the plastic on there, so that's kind of the one I probably throw the most. But yeah, if I'm throwing mats, it's going to be that launch frog. So colors, this is going to be a little bit regional, but are there certain colors that you prefer over others, and why, and what time of the year? Is there certain ones like, ooh, this right now, this is a yellow belly, or this is the white one, or when do you throw what colors, Daniel?
I pretty much just try to throw 2 or 3. I'll stick with that red ear, which is the yellow belly, and then I'll do a shad, and then I'll do a green pumpkin.
Gotcha. I'm definitely the same way. Like if I'm at Matt and I hear a bunch of popping, like it's and this like a fluke master thing on one of his videos, he said he likes a yellow belly whenever he gets up on mats and he can hear the brim popping. I said, well, I'll try that, and then ever since then I've kind of thrown one with yellow whenever I get in that situation. But Chris, how about you, man? Is there like a special Rhode Island juice color?
Well, I think one thing that I do that a lot of people don't around here is like I'll throw a frog where people wouldn't think to throw a frog. Like you're saying, like a clear water, rocky lake, with very little vegetation. I'll skip a frog under those shade lines and get bites. For those very clear water situations, I like a green pumpkin, Spro poppin' frog. I feel like that gets eaten pretty good in clear water. When the water is a little more stained, which, we have a variety of lakes around here, I don't really pay attention to the color that much. I like a pumpkin seed bluegill kind of combination for the most part. But at the same time, like if my frog gets ripped up by a pickerel, I'm more looking for a frog that's going to float and not sink, so I'll just grab whatever I have. But I feel like the color isn't the biggest thing with frog fishing if you're on like a mat or something, right? Because it's not like the fish can really see the color.
Yeah, I agree. And Tim, is it just like the white one 100% of the time?
Like 98% of the time.
Really?
No, white definitely is my favorite. I kind of agree with what Chris said. White is something you can go in random places where you wouldn't think to throw a frog, and you just speed that thing across the water, and it's like a shad, right? But white is definitely my favorite color. I do throw black, and then I do keep a green pumpkin with a yellow belly. Can't tell you the last time I actually threw that. But clear water with grass, where they can see the frog in the holes and stuff. Yeah, I'll adjust my color if I need to, for sure. So.
Gotcha.
One of the
And
things-
my colors are just same kind of things y'all said. Black, greens, white. Yeah.
One of the things I've noticed on the that Spro red ear, where it's got a green back and a yellow belly, is if it comes off a pad upside down, and when it rotates, it gets smashed. So you got that flash from yellow. You got that color change.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's like a reaction from the fish.
Yeah. There you go. And is everybody throwing braid?
I hope.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Heavy braid.
What pound braid? Is it like 50 and 65, or y'all going down to 30?
I mean, I throw 50 religiously. That FX2 Sunline.
Yeah.
I mean, for me,
Frog and
casting
flipping.
the frog is important, and I want the braid that seems to bird nest the least amount when I'm trying to skip it. So that's been my best line I've tried anyway over the years. More consistent.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, same way. I throw 50. Actually, it's pretty much all I throw is 50.
Yeah.
I like the fins, the Infinity braid, their black braid they have, the 8-strand. It casts a mile is really why I really love that braid. But yeah, 50. You got to throwing in the slop or throwing around the woods. You got to wrench them out of there sometimes. So.
Yeah.
I'm
Daniel?
throwing the Spro Max Quattro, that thinner braid. I'm still going 50 at least, but it's probably got the diameter of a 30.
Okay. I hadn't even heard of that one. I'll have to check it out.
Comes
Makes
off. I
sense.
mean, you cast a country mile, comes off real smooth.
Chuck, how about you throwing 50?
Y'all talking about line?
Yeah.
Sorry, we had a storm come through earlier, so my phone's acting
No,
funny.
you're
So I
good.
got my wife's laptop right now. But yeah, I throw 40 right now. Hopefully you can hear me. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're
we
good.
can hear you.
Yeah, I throw 40. Just I think Power Pro, whatever the cheapest stuff I can find is not the slick, so that if I am around grass, it'll cut right through it. But I probably need to throw 50, but I throw 40, and I did break one off, but it didn't cost me. But yeah, I would recommend 50 for sure.
I don't think I've ever. I mean, Lord, knock on wood, but I don't think I've ever broken one off. I bought, like, I've said this before. I'm just repeating myself on every show, but I bought like thousands of yards like 10,000 yards of 50-pound braid from Gerald Swindle. It was actually Darian Craig, who was his assistant at the time. Darian is fishing, who now owns Y'all Sweet Tea. But he was like changing from Vicious to a different sponsor, and he was selling all different kind. I bought all kind of crap. It was all used. He's very hard on stuff. But I bought like 10,000 yards of 50-pound Vicious braid, and I'm still using it 10 years later. That's all I use for everything. I've never used Vicious anything else, but it's well, I did. The fluoro was trash, but the braid was actually good. So yeah, 50-pound Vicious braid. There we go. All right, so rod reel, like, and this is where I think it's not contentious, but I think everybody kind of has their own thoughts on it. It definitely is going to depend on what kind of water you fish. Maybe you have 2 different rods, or 3 or 4, who knows? But it seems like there can definitely be a lot of variation in maybe not so much power, but in length. So Daniel, what kind of rods you using for frog fishing?
Unfortunately,
Flapping frog. Wait. Let me guess. Flapping frog, because you want to be a little bit more, accurate with your cast, because it's more of a toad style. You're probably using one that's a little bit shorter. But you're a big dude. Maybe I can see him shoulders. Maybe you're throwing like 8 foot. I don't know.
I'm throwing. I've got a bunch of the old All Pro rods,
Okay.
so I'm throwing a heavy fast 7.
All star.
Yeah, All Pro.
All pro.
They're a Nashville company.
I
So
got you.
it's no longer in existence. But
Oh,
they're
okay.
$200, $400 rods, and I've got a full set of everything. So
Dang.
eventually I'm gonna have to switch. I just don't know to who or what yet.
Hmm.
But I'm going like 7.5, heavy, fast. That way I can do open, or I can do heavy vegetation.
Gotcha. So 7.5. Okay. Chris?
Yeah, so I got two rods I'll use, one for if I'm like, skipping docks or fishing the clear water like I was talking about earlier. That'll be like a 7'2" FX, medium heavy action, micro guides. Nothing crazy. I just want like a light rod that's not gonna get my arm tired from walking the frog all day. And then if I'm fishing heavy vegetation, I have a G Loomis heavy action. I think it's a
Oh.
7.6 frog rod.
Okay.
So I'll throw that if I'm fishing like heavy vegetation where I'm gonna need to pull the fish out of the cover. So those are my two setups I would use.
That's a big one too, where it's, frog, and like you almost have to spend a good amount of money on it and have a good rod, because it can be, if you don't, it can just be so difficult on you going through the grass and getting
Mhm.
it free, and that big heavy
Yeah,
rod.
having
Man,
the heavy rod is definitely really key for those situations where I'm throwing that scum frog, launch frog, trying to pull the fish out because you can easily get overpowered in the heavy vegetation.
yeah, for sure. Tim?
I'm the same way. I throw 7.3 heavy. H&H down here. They're here. They're a local rod maker here. They brand for some other companies and stuff, but they have their own lines, and they make a really good just 7.3 heavy fast. It's light, and I think that's why I really like it so much. It's not really heavy, so I can sling a frog around all day. We did it yesterday, right? And your arm doesn't get tired, because if your rod's, if you got a heavy rod on there, it's just like a deep crank and stuff. You're winching down, and it makes you tired after a while. So if you can find a good heavy rod, it's over 7 foot, that's not so heavy it's going to wear your arm out, you probably do pretty good with it, with a frog.
Yeah.
So,
But y'all, I mean, both of y'all 7.2, 7.3. I mean, that sounds, sounds like a good in between,
Yep.
Chuck?
Yeah, I'm with those guys. My all around is like the 7.3 heavy action, and if I'm throwing grass, I have a 7 foot, 7-inch extra heavy. Like if I'm fishing that Gunnersville stuff, like the cheese, but probably 90% of the time that 7.3 heavy gets it done for me.
Yeah. And my main one is a 7 foot heavy fast cash, and whatever I don't know, whatever the good one is. I forget the name of it. It's a great rod. I like the shorter one. The what?
The Kara? Oh, you said cashing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever, the elite or whatever.
Yeah.
The old yellow handles. Now I have the newer one. I forget the rod. It's not a John Cruz one, but it's, I don't know. Whatever. It's a good rod. And I like the grip on it for frog fishing, because you definitely get a lot of, it seems like whenever you're really trying to set the hook on them real good, uh, that grip on there is really good for it. I don't love it for everything else, but for that, it's really good. And then I usually use, like they said, something a little bit bigger and heavier, like a 7. I have a Falcon Expert. It's called the Dragger. I use it for some swim baits and things like that, but it's good for that as well. It's 7.6 heavy. So I guess kind of now we'll talk about, like, because everybody's probably just using a little bit bigger. You want to be able to catch up to them pretty quick. So everybody's using probably a little bit bigger, 6 or 7 speed reel, maybe an 8, something like that. That sound about right. 6, 7, 8. I guess that'd have to be one of those, but probably a 7 or 8.
7.5 to 8.3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm using 8.1.
8.
7.3.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
a 7.3 as well.
Yeah, I think mine's a 7. I have a Smoke HD. It's got the big handles I like on it. The so kind of what are your techniques for fishing? So for both people that are just getting into it and people have been doing it for a long time, maybe there's some kind of tip that you can give them with a different kind of techniques. Uh, is there anything that you can share both for the new and the advanced? Maybe something that they wouldn't know or something that you do that you think it stands out to other people's frog technique? Daniel, we'll just keep doing a circle. It's easy.
Yeah.
So the biggest, I think the biggest overarching thing on a frog is waiting to set the hook. So I sent you a link that you can post in the comments. Unfortunately, we can't share it. I've tried to get permission to share these people's videos and stuff before, and I can't. But it's a slow motion of a fish hitting a frog, and you can see exactly at the point in time whenever a fish hits it and start to take it down, and they open their mouth to suck it in, and you see people, you know in your head that's exactly whenever most people set the hook. It's that second that it's got it between its lips, it turns, it opens to suck in, people set the hook, the frog's gone, fish is gone. So you just give that 3 count, let it suck it in, close, and dive, it's gonna hook up. Your hookup's gonna be so high.
And also, is like you doing any kind of special, are you bending out the hooks, bend them up, cutting the tails, anything like that?
If
Bobber stops on the front of the line, or any kind of sneaky little thing.
it depends. If I'm doing like horny toads versus a hollow body frog, I'll put a bead in front of it so that it gets some erratic patterns as you pull it
Okay.
across top of the water. I'll take a turkey baster and I'll put a little juice inside the frog.
I'm sorry.
So I'll take a turkey
What?
baster or a
What kind of juice you
syringe,
putting in your frogs?
and I'll put a little juice inside the frog, so whenever they smash it, they get a little flavor burst.
Dang, I like it. All right.
It's like
So
it's a gusher.
yeah, I mean, well,
Exactly.
so what it'll do is it'll trail the scent. It'll do 2 things. It'll trail the scent if they're following it, and if they bite it, they're going to get a surge of. They're just not going to let go.
I mean, who doesn't like a squirter? I mean, Chris, how about you, man?
So elaborating on that, so I don't pull out the turkey baster, but I do put some
I might be pulling
Procure.
out the turkey baster from here on out. By the way,
No turkey baster for me, but I do put Procure on the frog. Yeah, obviously that's like the fish attractant, but for me, I feel like it's more for lubrication purposes. I feel like I get a cleaner, smoother hook set, with the oily frog than one that's not oily, because I feel like the crushers on a fish, if they really clamp down on that thing, you're not going to get much of a hook set, especially on like a big fish over 20 inches. So I put it on for that reason. I also think obviously they're going to get a little bit of a taste of it. But I feel like overall, my little trick is I think frogs have a lot of drawing power. I think if you are in the strike zone and you can fish a frog slow, you can draw a fish from like a few feet away, especially in clear water. So for me, when I'm fishing a frog, if I feel like it's in the strike zone, I'm going to fish it very slow. But once it's out of that strike zone, you really got to reel it in and make another cast.
gotcha. So don't waste your time in dead water.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, Tim.
The best piece of advice I have for people is they put a frog down too fast. And when I talk to people, a lot of them they'll admit that. I love throwing a frog. I almost have one tied on year round. Yeah, and people won't get bid on it, and then they'll just put it down and say, "Oh, they're not biting. They're not biting it today." Right? sometimes it's about how you're working it, about your cadence, your speed, things like that. A lot of that makes a difference in how you're working a frog, and people associate that with, if I'm hearing frogs, I can throw a frog, or if I see grass, I can throw a frog, right? But, when the shad spawn is going, I love a frog. It's probably one of my favorite times to throw a frog, because they will
Especially that white
absolutely
frog.
smash a frog running across the top of the water. Now my arm's tired because you're working it so fast, but they'll just blast it. So I think that's probably one of my biggest pieces of advice is don't put it down so fast, and tinker with it for a while. Throw around different stuff, throw it at different speeds, figure out what they want, because when you do, you can win a whole tournament, just because you figured out one little thing. I've done it on Fairfield. Did y'all ever fish Fairfield in
man.
KFL?
I love that place.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was a February tournament, and it was still pretty cold, and there was sparse grass here, there, dead grass and stuff. And I was just flinging a frog around and figured out that's what they wanted, and I didn't put it down. Almost busted 100. I would have if I wouldn't have lost one of them, but it just happened. They weren't touching topwater anywhere, but it was just how they wanted it. And if I'd have put it down, I'd have never even figured that out. So I think that's the number one thing. And then the second one is, I don't use the turkey baster. That's a new one. I'm actually going to have to try that. Everybody's going to be out here buying turkey basters. Get sponsored by Turkey Baster Company. So most frogs will have, the water exit hole. The booyahs are back here, right? I really like the little bitty glass rattle. The little ones. They break when they get in there. I don't put them in there to stay together. I put them in there to break, and it just makes a really subtle, very interesting racket. So I'd say that's my other little trick. I like to use my frogs. I stick it in every single one of them, no matter what brand it is. So.
Chuck?
If you're just starting out, keep it simple. Get you a couple frogs from a couple good companies that have made frogs for forever. Not some of these new companies that come up and make frogs, but your Spros, they were the first ones that I know of. Your Booyahs, really good. Get you one of those, and the color don't matter. Just look at the belly. You either got a white frog, a black frog, or a yellow frog, or a brown frog. There's basically 4 colors. Just keep it kind of simple and bend the hooks out a little bit. I like doing that. You don't have to, especially with the booyahs being so soft. You don't have to bend them out at all. But I do like to bend them out, not up, but bend them like away from the frog body. You basically want to. Let me see if I can show you. You want to be able to make it where when you grab the side of the frog, that it catches your fingers. So you say that they're not up at all, but they're out. I don't know if you can see that or not, but that's my recommendation. Bend them out a little bit, not up, and just get you a couple and throw it. Like Tim said, they'll bite it all year. I either have that or a spook on, and it's basically a weedless spook. One more thing, get good at just walking it in place. It takes a lot of practice with any type of like walking bait or anything like that. Just make like if you can walk that thing in place and it doesn't move but maybe like a half inch or an inch like to the boat, if you're in that strike zone, they can't stand it doing that. So I guess those few things are kind of what I've learned, and definitely makes it starting out a lot easier.
I think I've done like every dumb thing to a frog you can do. Like I've cut them open and I put BBs in there. Like I used to put, before the Boom Boom frog came out that has Velcro on the top, I used to put a bunch of super glue on the top because I thought it gave it more texture before those came out. I don't really think it does anything. I came up with that one myself, a damn original idea. I've cut the legs, I've bent out the hooks, everything you can do to a frog, I've done it. Does it help? For me, I don't, maybe, a glass rattle, that sounds like a good idea. The baster is scent's never bad, especially because I think scent a lot of times can be overused, but for baits where it's sitting and it's staying in one spot for a long time, make more sense to me. So that's the baster putting scent on it. I haven't done that before, so maybe that one I will try. But yeah, just like Chuck said, if you're just getting into frogs, so much fun. Just find some grass, throw a frog up there, and move it around. You'll get bit eventually, and then you'll be hooked, and then it'll be you along with the fish, and then you'll enjoy it. It's such a good time.
One of the other things on your older spros is to boil them in water
Yeah,
a dozen times. Yeah, it'll soften the bodies up, make them a little tacky.
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, I've
I
heard people
boil
do
the hell out of them too. So you do it like 12 times?
Yeah, I'll boil them, let them cool off, boil them. I'll do it a dozen times over a couple of days. Uh, the newest ones they have out are softer, so I don't really you don't really have to do it, but you'll get some of the harder ones that it makes a night and day difference. A lot of guys will throw them
Yeah,
up on their dash, leave them on the
yeah.
dash of their truck for a month.
I think maybe that was a problem because I would boil them once and then it wouldn't really like. I remember taking my box and just dumping all the frogs in a pot. My wife laughing at me, and like I'd do it one time and then it was like it didn't really do anything. But I guess if you're boiling it a dozen times, it would.
It make a big difference. It'll really soften them up.
Do you scent the water while you're doing it?
No, the whole house would be reeking.
Yeah. Well, I thought like, maybe putting because I remember like I'm not talking. Speaking of Fluke Master again, like he was saying he would put BBs in there because it would weigh down the frog a little bit if you were fishing mats. That the frog would sit if it had more weight, it would sit down lower on the mat and increase your hookup ratio.
No, Lee Livesey did that, but to make bomb cast on Chickamauga when he won that tournament.
Yeah.
He put
But
like
I
he would
throw
put
the
like
launch.
weights.
Now I throw the launch frog, and it's if I feel like it's got enough weight that it, they're not just nosing it out of the water a bunch, I guess.
So there's another. So Spro makes that spitting shad.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get a little water in the spitting shad, you can actually fish it like a jerk bait. And this only applies whenever you're doing like a Spro only tournament.
Yeah.
That you can get some water in it, it'll submerge, and then you can rip it like a jerk bait underneath the water. And you get some crazy reaction bites.
Are you putting treble hooks on the hooks too?
Nope. You bend them out a little. You bend them out a little bit, and Spro frog. You're just fishing it slightly different.
I mean, for a tournament, that can make all the difference whenever you're trying to make a frog more versatile for that tournament.
Interesting.
I know some guys that punch them, like especially in those all spray tournaments. They'll put a big punching weight on the front of it and like punch frogs.
Really?
What?
Nice.
Yeah.
You got to read the rule. You got to read the rules so you know exactly how far you can take it.
Yeah.
Dang.
Never heard of that one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, it's like Gunnersville. They have the Spro only frog tournament. So, yeah. Like this year, every year they also have it was the rattle trap tournament this year because Yamamoto got bought out by them. It was the Yamamoto, Bill Lewis / something else that only tournament up on Gunnersville. And same thing, like you're trying to, before, whenever it was just Bill Lewis and it's just rattle traps, like you're trying to do whatever you can to that bait to make it more versatile to do different, because they'd only have a couple of baits that you could use. So people would people were doing some shady stuff with them, not shady, like it would say in the rules, like exactly what you could do. But yeah, people were heavy modification to these rattle traps to make them do something they were not intended to do.
When you're doing the Spro only tournaments, you can't replace the legs. But if you can replace the legs with live rubber, you get way more sporadic action of the legs on the frogs as well.
Do you do that to your frogs and not in those tournaments?
I have a few, yes. I won't do it. Like if I do the Spro tournaments, I will buy. I'll hopefully do it again next year. They haven't done it for 2 years, but I will go buy specific for the tournament. I won't reuse anything I have because I can't remember what I replaced the rubber on. So
Dang, Daniel is sneaky. Turkey basting, different legs. Yeah. My man's getting out there with them frogs. I like it.
well, the only way I could make state sometimes was to go for big bass. So
That's right. Hey, if it's legal, do it, man. I like it.
So I would go hunting for the big bass. I wouldn't care about the limit. I would just go for the big bass.
So what did I forget with frogs? Tell me, is there anything I missed?
They catch giants.
High risk, high reward.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, I fish a frog around docks too a lot. I feel like
Skipping on the dock.
you really got to be an accurate caster, which I don't know if you guys follow the KFL. They call me the sniper a little bit, but making those crazy casts with a frog, like in between pontoons, and you're able to present a frog where not many people throw it. I feel like that's when you get those crazy big bites sometimes. That's like the funnest part for me, honestly.
Yeah.
Follow-up baits. I think follow-up baits are extremely important with a frog. Not necessarily when you're up in the thick stuff, right? Because if fish will
What can
hit
you?
them, yeah, like you throw it back over there, and if they missed it, they'll probably try and hit it again, right?
Senko.
They can't really see it that well. But, when you're on more of that sporadic grass or more of an open water, submerged grass, and so you've got that little bit of space at the top in the water, you throw a frog and they miss it, they may not try and hit it again. So I definitely always keep a weightless, true center stick, a stick bait, right? That I'll follow up with, and I'll chunk back in there if I miss them coming at it. We had a few yesterday, we'd be reeling it in, and they wanted the frog so stinking fast, you almost couldn't do it fast enough for them. And they had a few swiping at it when we're reeling it back in, and that weightless stick bait did some work for us too on the follow-ups, like around cypress trees and stuff. So I think that's important. Have a follow-up bait. You don't always need it, but it's good to have with you if you're in that open water situation. They miss your frog.
I always do the same way, follow up with a Senko. Chris, because you said this, have you ever? Well, you fish it. You were saying you fish it in a lot of open water, so not as much grass. But I'm thinking, why haven't I ever put a Senko on heavy tackle, 50-pound braid or something like that, and tried to get it into that hole, where instead of fishing it on the outside of the mat or in open water, trying to get a Senko in there. If that's my follow-up and I'm committed to a frog all day, I'm going to Guntersville, why not throw that,
I think
6-inch? Yeah.
Well, the frog just has more drawing power than a Senko does. You can pull a fish out of cover better with that frog, and then if you do happen to miss it, throw that Senko back in. But I've had a good amount of success getting frog fish to eat it a second time if I haven't put hooks in them. Because everyone, I don't care how good of a frog fisherman you think you are, everyone gets excited and misses fish, and it happens. But having the composure to make that perfect cast within 5 to 10 seconds after missing the fish and, getting him to eat again. That picture I sent you, that fish, Daniel, actually, that fish ate it the second time. I missed it the first time, and that ended up being the lunker of the tournament and lunker of the season, actually, for our club. So, just kind of keeping composed in those moments of like, oh my God, I just missed a giant, I feel like that makes a big difference.
For sure. Chuck,
What's up?
did I miss anything?
Nah, I mean, we covered rods, reels, line, people's. I mean, I missed a lot of it, so it's my
No,
phone. But yeah, I mean, the stuff I've heard, it sounds pretty good.
To me, there's maybe two more things to call out. Is pause at the boat. Don't, especially for new people, don't reel the frog down to the tip of your pole, and pause a split second, half a second before you lift the frog out of the water for your next cast. I don't know how many times I've been smashed right at the kayak. The times I have been snapped off is when I've been lost focus and I've reeled the frog to the rod tip. I've literally gotten hit on the rod tip and snapped off.
Ooh.
Wow.
And we're talking big bass. I mean, we're talking, you're talking 10-pound bass that are falling all the way to the kayak, or you've got that Folgers can size mouth sucking in water as you lift the bait out of the water because you're trying to rush the next cast. So I'd say just pause a second there. And then the other one is a lot of people are scared of bait casters for frog fishing, and that you should Google how to put training wheels on a reel. Get somebody to cast it out for you, put some black electrical tape on it, minimize how much you can backlash, and just dig in and learn how to use a bait caster.
That's right.
Yes.
I see a lot of people, even people who are supposedly higher level in our sport, using, sometimes they'll use the wrong gear, in my mind at least. Both backwards, both ways, like spinning and bait casting. So this to me frogs would only be a bait casting technique, and some can go either way, but I see, I think it's a common mistake for people to use the wrong kind of gear, on a technique, and it just leads to low hookup ratio. The risk reward, maybe you get a couple extra bites if you think a fish is line shy and you go to spin and tackle rather than bait caster, but most of the time, it's not worth the heartache, I guess, So
I do have one more.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah,
when you cast your frog out there, always let it sit until the ripples kind of dissipate a little bit. You don't want to start working it as soon as it hits the water. Definitely want to throw it out there, let it sit for a second, and then they're looking at it when it hits the water a lot of the times. And then when you move it, when there's no ripples, man, they'll come unglued on it. So take your time with it. Cast it out there, let it sit for a second, and then start working it.
I think letting your frog kind of land very softly too will help in certain situations. Not spooking the fish, especially in shallow water.
Yep, and that's where Daniel's turkey baster will come in hand, because you let it sit, and that that oil slick will just kind of be hovering around.
If you make a really dumb cast with a frog, just like Chuck's saying, just give it some time and let the fish forget that it's there. Give it 10, 15 seconds. You'll be okay. Just, wait a few seconds. Let the dumbness of the cast, like the shock of the cast, go away, and then start it, if you do something crazy. My only suggestion would be, if you're fishing, especially in mat situations, be on your game. Be focused, be intentional, and be, like Swindle says, the pencil sharpener. Get that fish in. I think, and a lot of times people lose fish in the mats, and I have to physically think about, I'm trying to get on the fish as quick as I can, and it's almost like lifting them, you want to be kind of pulling it almost up at the same time that you're reeling as hard as you can to get it up on top of the mat. Once you get it on top, you can get it rolling, but just getting it up there sometimes, you don't want to just drag the fish in the mat, because you give them such a chance to come off. But so your goal, mat fishing, to me is getting it on top of the mat as quick as possible. And every split second that you're not focused on that objective, your hookup ratio goes way down. So that's a big one. Whenever you can get the technique of getting them up on top of a mat and really getting on them, that's a fishing mat specifically frog mat fishing becomes better. Yeah.
Baby powder. I don't know why I forgot about it.
Oh, yes.
Baby powder.
I'm sorry, what?
Look, I got my box at the office. Everybody's probably looking at me weird up here. Like, I don't know if you can see it. I'm going to spill baby powder. I got it all over my desk here from picking these stupid frogs up. But it works. I mean, it's no joke. The baby powder trick helps just keep that moisture out, helps keep your legs from getting all sticky and stuck together. And, they get almost hard in a way. It works. It works so well. I've started putting baby powder in my other boxes.
It works for
my jig box.
For sure.
I've got baby powder in there. I've got it in everything, even my crankbaits. And I don't have any rust problems. The boxes are waterproof, but we all know how waterproof really is.
Water in
baby powder works really well, and it comes off. I mean, it comes right off when you get it in the water. If you don't think it does, stick it in there and rub it a little bit in the water. It'll come off. That is a trick that works really well.
Yeah, that's a really good
to save
yourself. It sounds dumb, but yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, Tim, I know you're an entrepreneur. Scented baby powder just for your baits.
They got lavender.
It might as well have a smell on it whenever you're putting it in there, so it could be absorbing some of it. Yeah.
Can you imagine the first call we get from somebody with a new baby who accidentally switched out the scented baby powder for the real stuff?
And the lawyer
watch yelling at him, man, you made it look just like the real thing. Oh, it'd be...
why does my baby smell like my baby's nuts smell like coffee?
Dad, you can share.
Yeah. Okay, well, just little warning labels, add them on there, and then you got a product.
It's called fishing powder, not baby.
Fishing powder. There you go.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to give you all a chance. Shout out anybody who makes fishing easier for you. Daniel, we'll start with you, man.
Music City Outdoors.
There you go. Jimmy's spot. I like it.
Oh yeah.
Chris.
So I'm on the Hobie fishing team. So obviously having a Hobie Outback makes frog fishing easier for me. Also, local dealership I work with is the Kayak Center, and they've really helped me out whenever I've had anything go wrong. So I've always had a kayak that's been functioning.
That's right. It's important. It's an important part of kayak fishing. I like it.
Definitely.
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, since we're talking about frogs, H&H, these guys, they make phenomenal rods. I love their stuff, and their heavy rod is my favorite frog rod I've ever had. Those guys make good stuff. And then Finn's great. I've been using Finn's forever. I really like their stuff. It's strong. It casts them off. So those two companies, when it comes to frogging, that's all I use. So.
That's right. And Tim's my a partner with X Zone, so get in the zone. X Zone.
Yeah, baby. See if they come out with a frog. But they need to come out with next.
Yeah, holler at Jim. Maybe I told him something else he should make. I was like, man, I know Brandon Polinick and Carl Jacobson, they might have your ear a little bit more than I do, but this is a bait you should make. And it was the Gilly. It was the Gilly before the Gilly came out, and it won Best in Show. And they ended up not making it because I guess it wasn't like they didn't think it was something that they'd be able to sell enough of. But because I used them like I mean, they get on an X Zone thing, but it was I like free rigging it, not the Gilly, but the Do Live Shad. And I don't like spending $10 on 4 damn baits, so I tried to get him to make it, and he wouldn't do it. But maybe one. All right, Chuck, how about you, man?
The good Lord up above for letting us catch these fish, and my wife and family.
That's right. I'll shout out Bucks Island since Chuck's
Yeah.
wearing a hat, man.
Yeah,
If,
I like to rep them. Big Chap, big guy. You know, those are good folks. If y'all need something, holler at them.
yeah, go holler at Chap. If you're in Alabama, kind of Georgia, Tennessee, and and you can't find the kayak you've been looking for, give Chap at Bucks Island a call and he'll hook you up. They got all the Hobies and all the Jacksons, even the new orange Hobies, which I know have been sold out in a lot of places. I think they have a couple. So there you go. Appreciate y'all being on, and we'll see y'all again next week. That's it. Yeah, y'all be good.